Man becomes a whole, calm, fertile, and happy being only when, and only then, his process of individuation is complete, when the conscious and the unconscious have learned to live in peace and complement one another. What if the life you're living right now is an accident, but a memory? Have you ever stopped in the middle of an ordinary day and felt it like a tremor beneath your skin? That moment when the air thickens, the world slows, and a quiet knowing rises from somewhere deep inside you. You meet someone for the first time and your heart says, "I've been here before." You walk into a city you've never seen and it feels like coming home. Or maybe you carry a pain you can't explain, a grief that doesn't belong to any story you remember. It's as if your soul has walked these paths before, as if the hands you hold now have touched you in another time, under another sky. There's a flame that flickers behind your ribs, ancient, steady, familiar. The body is new, yes, but the fire has been burning for lifetimes. Jung believed that our souls are not born as blank pages waiting to be written on. We come into this world already carrying a library within us. The collective unconscious, a deep reservoir of ancestral memory that transcends culture and time. It's not personal history, it's symbolic history. It's the place where humanity stores its wisdom, its fears, its eternal stories. Every human who has ever lived leaves a trace there, and you, without knowing, carry those traces in your dreams, your instincts, your sudden feelings that make no logical sense. This is why a symbol can move you to tears, why a melody can feel sacred, why you sense that your life has meaning beyond what you can see. The collective unconscious speaks in images, not in words. In the mother, who gives life and demands sacrifice. In the hero, who must lose himself to find what cannot die. In the child, who holds a possibility of beginning again. These are not just stories. They're living energies moving through you. Jung wrote that the psyche is not born tabula rasa. It is pre-existent and preformed. That means the essence of you has been here before the body, before the name, before the story you think is yours. What we call growth may actually be remembrance, a slow awakening to what your soul already knows but your mind has forgotten. And yet, the moment we are born, we forget. Our first breath is both a beginning and a loss. The cry of a newborn isn't only physical. It's the soul grieving the separation from the whole, from the source it once knew. Then life begins its training. This is who you are. This is how you should act. This is the world. Piece by piece, we build the ego, the mask that helps us survive, but also hides a deeper truth of who we are. We start chasing approval, comfort, success, and we call it living, while somewhere inside, something ancient waits for us to remember. But sometimes the cracks appear, a dream that shakes you awake, a silence that feels sacred, a coincidence so perfect it leaves you trembling, a déjà vu that feels like a message coded in emotion. Those are not random. They are the voice of the self, the totality of who you are, conscious and unconscious, calling you back to wholeness. Jung once said that the self is not only the center, but also the circumference that embraces both the conscious and the unconscious. It's the eternal part of you watching the temporary one struggle, whispering softly, "Remember." And maybe that's what the ache inside you really is, not loneliness, but homesickness for something your mind can't name. Maybe that's why you feel drawn to certain symbols, certain people, certain patterns of pain and love. They're not coincidences. They're fragments of an older story you came here to finish. The people you meet, the challenges you face, the moments that break you open. They are all pages of a book your soul has been writing for centuries. You are not here to learn from nothing. You are here to remember what you already carry. The wisdom that once guided the ancients lives in you. The courage of those who walked before you pulses in your blood. The patterns of the universe are not out there. They're printed in the architecture of your being. And so the journey begins not with adding more, but with listening to the dreams that repeat, to the emotions that don't make sense, to the call that doesn't go away no matter how much you try to silence it. Because the truth is, your life isn't random. It's symbolic. Every moment, every person, every heartbreak is a reflection of something sacred trying to reach you. But if we came into this world to remember, why do we spend our whole lives trying to forget? Long before your name, your fears, or the stories you tell about who you are, Something within you already knew the way. It's strange to think about, isn't it? That before you open your eyes to this world, a deeper intelligence was already guiding your steps. Jung called this inner compass the self, the totality of the psyche, the wholeness that holds both the conscious and the unconscious. The self is not the person you think you are. It is the vast, unseen pattern that dreams you into being. The ego, the part of you that says, I, is just one small island in a much greater ocean. It's the temporary mask the soul wears to navigate the world of form. But beneath it flows an ancient current, the self, that remembers where you came from and where you're meant to return. Jung described it as a central archetype, the organizing principle of the psyche, the spark of the divine that seeks to bring every fragment of you back into unity. Imagine the soul as a traveler standing on the edge of eternity, about to step into the river of time. Before it crosses, it looks back at the infinite and whispers a promise. I will remember. Then, with one deep breath, it dives into the waters of forgetting. The river wraps around it, erasing the memory of where it came from, yet leaving behind faint impressions, symbols, instincts, longings that will someday lead it home. Those traces are what Jung found in the unconscious. As he wrote in The Nature of the Psyche, the unconscious contains the seeds of future conscious contents. Every intuition, every dream, every unexplainable feeling is a seed from that timeless soil, waiting for the light of awareness to awaken it. You've seen this in your own life, haven't you? The dream that arrives just before a turning point. The intuition that whispers, don't go there, before your mind can explain why. The coincidence that feels too perfect to dismiss. These are not accidents. They are messages from the deeper self, gentle reminders that you're not lost, only remembering the map that was written inside you. When Jung studied synchronicities, he saw them not as mere chance, but as the meeting point between inner meaning and outer event, the visible footprints, the invisible order that guides you. And so, life becomes less of a random series of events and more of a sacred conversation between your ego and yourself. The dream is the self speaking in symbols. The intuition is its whisper through your instincts. The synchronicity is its hand rearranging the external world to mirror your inner truth. But the ego, busy, proud, certain, likes to believe it's in control. It calls these things coincidences, fantasies, imagination. It dismisses them because it fears what it cannot control. Yet there's a quiet rebellion happening inside you. Every time your heart pulls you towards something that doesn't make logical sense, the self is trying to break through the noise. Every moment you pause long enough to feel instead of think, to trust instead of plan, you step closer to remembering what the soul promised before it entered this life. You begin to feel that your journey is not about becoming something new. It's about recalling what has always been there, waiting for you to listen. But here's the paradox. To live, the soul must forget. To experience the fullness of life, it must with a massive separation. Only through forgetting can we rediscover meaning. Only through darkness can the memory of light become real again. The question is not whether the self is guiding you. It always is. The question is, will you remember to listen? Because somewhere between survival and silence, between what you think you want and what you deeply know, the agreement still waits. The soul remembers the vow it made at the edge of eternity. But what happens when the ego forgets the promise the soul made before it was born? Forgetting was never a failure of the soul. It was part of the plan. Without forgetting, there could be no story, no discovery, no consciousness. The soul needed a stage, and forgetting built it. To awaken, you first have to fall asleep. To remember who you are, you must first lose yourself. The ego is born in that forgetting. It's the part of you that believes the play is real, that the mask is your face. The soul, meanwhile, remains the author behind the curtain, watching the actor forget the script and start improvising. The irony is almost divine. We spend our lives searching for meaning while being the very ones who hid it from ourselves. The amnesia wasn't punishment. It was preparation. Jung understood this. He saw that consciousness emerges only when we separate from the totality, when we step out of the ocean of the self and call ourselves I. The self doesn't mind forgetting. It allows the ego to believe it's in charge, to make mistakes, to learn through contrast. It lets you fall in love with illusions, so that one day you'll long for what's real. But even as you forget, the deeper self never stops speaking. It speaks in dreams, in the emotions you can't rationalize, in the patterns that repeat until you finally pay attention. The unconscious is its language, a symbolic field where memory and destiny intertwine. Jung wrote in The Man and His Symbols, "Man becomes whole only through the knowledge and acceptance of his unconscious." Those words are both warning and invitation, because everything you refuse to see will find another way to reach you. You see it in everyday life. The same argument repeating in different relationships. The same kind of person appearing with a different face. The same job that drains you, no matter how many times you change careers. Those aren't coincidences, they're conversations. The self is trying to get your attention through repetition, using your life as a mirror until you finally notice the pattern. The pain isn't punishment, it's communication. Each heartbreak, each loss, each moment that feels like deja vu is a symbol waiting to be understood. Dreams do this too. A childhood home that appears again and again. A voice calling your name from a distance. The same staircase, the same closed door. The unconscious never wastes imagery. It chooses symbols that fit your particular language of meaning. A flood might appear when emotions are oppressed. A shadow might chase you when you deny your anger or power. It's not random. It's guidance wrapped in metaphor. The psyche is an artist, and symbols are its brushstrokes. Think about those moments when something inside you resists without explanation, when your gut says no even though your logic says yes. That's the unconscious tugging at your sleeve. It remembers what the ego forgot. It knows where the path bends before you do. You can ignore it for a while, but not forever, because the self has patience beyond time, and it will keep whispering until you listen. And when we don't, when we push away our dreams, silence our intuition, and label our pain as weakness, the whispers grow louder. They turn into anxiety, exhaustion, a quiet emptiness that no success can fill. The soul doesn't punish. It signals. The ache you feel isn't failure. It's homesickness. The repetition of suffering isn't cruelty. It's the self knocking from the inside, asking to be remembered. We think healing comes from adding more light, but sometimes it begins by facing the dark, by admitting we've forgotten and choosing to remember. The unconscious isn't your enemy. It's your oldest ally. It holds the map your ego misplaced. Every symbol, every emotion, every recurring pattern is a piece of that map, leading you back to wholeness. But ignoring these signs has a cost, because when the dialogue between ego and self breaks, the story stalls. The actor forgets the script. The stage grows silent. And slowly, quietly, the soul begins to ache. Because when the self is not heard, the soul begins to grow sick. The sickness of the soul doesn't announce itself with fevers or scars. It appears as emptiness. It creeps in on quiet mornings when the alarm rings and you can't remember why you're getting up. It lingers in conversations that sound right but feel wrong. It hides behind the smile you wear when someone asks, "How are you?" And you say, "Fine," though a part of you has been asleep for years. This is the illness of forgetting who you are, not the person you perform, but the soul underneath the mask. Jung saw this long before it became our collective epidemic. He noticed that most modern neuroses weren't just psychological, they were spiritual. The people who came to him didn't need more success or approval or medication. They needed meaning. Their suffering wasn't proof of failure. It was a psyche's rebellion against a life too small for the soul. The modern world taught us to master everything except ourselves. We built machines that reach Mars, yet we can't sit in silence without feeling lost. We've learned to illuminate cities, but not the darkness within. In Psychology and Religion, Jung wrote, "Religion is a careful observation of the numinous, of that which seizes and dominates us, not something we invent. The numinous, the sacred force that humbles and awakens us, used to guide humanity. It lived in the rituals, in the stories, in the moments when all made us bow our heads without knowing why. But somewhere along the way, we traded mystery for certainty. We dissected God into definitions, replaced wonder with productivity, and called it progress. Now we rush through our days addicted to noise, terrified of stillness, because silence threatens to remind us of everything we've lost. We play endless roles, The achiever, the caretaker, the healer, the rebel, each one crafted to protect us from that one haunting question. Who am I, really? The more masks we wear, the emptier we feel. Because no matter how perfect the performance, the soul knows it's only a play. This is what Jung meant when he said that man's deepest problems cannot be solved by reason alone. You can't cure spiritual hunger with logic, nor fill the hole of meaning with distraction. The exhaustion you feel isn't just physical, it's existential. It's the weight of living in a world stripped of its sacred dimension. When the numinous disappears, life becomes flat, mechanical, and lonely. We become wanderers in a world of surfaces, trying to find transcendence in consumption, connection in algorithms, peace and control. But control never creates meaning. It only deepens the illusion that we're separate from something greater. And yet, even in our disconnection, the self doesn't abandon us. It waits behind the burnout, beneath the anxiety, beneath the relentless striving. The breakdowns you call failures are often the self's last attempt to wake you up. Depression can be a descent, but it's also an initiation, a call to return to what's real. The same emptiness that terrifies you can become a doorway, because when everything you built begins to crumble, only what's true remains. Jung saw hope there, not in escaping the pain, but in listening to it. He realized that the only cure for the soul's illness is reconnection to the inner world, to the symbols that still breathe in dreams, to mysterious force that once made us kneel in awe. The sacred was never lost. It was buried beneath our speed, our intellect, our fear of surrender. Healing doesn't mean going back to the past. It means finding the center again, the place inside you where the divine and the human still meet, the point where the mask dissolves, and you remember the author behind the role. Because Jung discovered that there's a path of return, not back to what was, but back to where you came from. Not to the past, but to the center. The way back is never a straight line. It's a spiral, leading you deeper each time you think you've found the center. Jung called this process individuation, the return of the soul to itself. It isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. It's not a climb toward heaven, but a descent into your own depths, where the divine hides behind everything you've tried to escape. This path is the homecoming your spirit has been longing for. The journey from fragmentation to unity, from forgetting to remembrance. The first step is recognizing the signs of the self. The self doesn't speak in logic. It speaks in symbols. It sends you dreams that don't follow time, coincidences too meaningful to ignore, creative impulses that appear out of nowhere. You'll know its language when you start to feel that life is arranging itself around you, whispering through patterns and emotions. When a song plays at the exact moment you needed to hear it, when a stranger says the words your soul was craving, when an idea won't leave you alone. That's the self calling. The task is not to control it, but to listen. Keep a journal by your bed. Write your dreams before the morning light erases them. Treat every image as a message coded in your native tongue of meaning. The second step is integrating the shadow, the parts of you that the ego banished to survive. The anger, envy, pride, neediness, and fear you try to bury are not enemies. They're wounded allies. The more you reject them, the louder they become. To integrate the shadow is to meet it without judgment, to say, I see you, and ask what has been trying to protect. Jung believed that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The shadow isn't darkness itself. It's potential energy trapped in denial. Once faced, it turns from poison into power, from resistance into integration. The third step is uniting the opposites. Every conflict inside you, the tug between reason and emotion, control and surrender, light and dark, is a mirror of the universal polarity that fuels creation. Jung called the bridge between them the transcendent function, writing in The Nature of the Psyche, section 145. 147. The transcendent function unites consciousness and unconsciousness and makes possible a new attitude. When you stop choosing sides and start holding both truths at once, a new level of awareness emerges. It's not compromise, it's alchemy. Out of friction, transformation is born. You begin to realize that peace doesn't come from silencing one voice, but from letting all of them sing in harmony. The fourth step is learning to live symbolically. This is when life itself becomes a sacred dialogue. You begin to see meaning where others see chaos, connection where others see coincidence. A broken mirror isn't just glass. It's a reflection of how your inner world is shifting. A storm outside mirrors the turbulence within. The world starts speaking to you in metaphors, and you respond not with analysis, but with reverence. This is the language of the soul, the language of dreams made visible. To live symbolically is to walk through your day with the awareness that everything is communicating something to you. Along this path, practice presence. Write your dreams, even the strange ones. Meditate in silence, even for 5 minutes, to let the unconscious breathe. Pause before reacting. Ask what emotion is really trying to tell you. Notice the patterns that repeat and resist the urge to label them bad. They're not punishments. They're teachers. Individuation is not a theory. It's a daily practice of remembering. The more you align with the self, the more life aligns with you. You stop chasing meaning, because meaning begins to chase you. The world becomes both mirror and guide. You begin to feel at home not because everything makes sense, but because you trust that everything belongs. But even on the path of remembrance, there are traps waiting, subtle illusions that make the ego believe it has already arrived. And that is where the real danger begins. The closer you come to remembering who you are, the subtler the illusions become. The greatest traps of awakening don't appear as darkness. They appear as light. They whisper, "You've made it." They flatter the ego that once felt small, convincing it that it has now become divine. But the self has no interest in being superior. It only wants to be whole. Jung knew this paradox well. The more light you uncover, the longer the shadow it casts. The first trap is spiritual inflation. When the ego mistakes awakening for achievement, you begin to feel that your awareness makes you different, maybe even higher than others. The language changes. I'm vibrating higher. They're not awakened yet. But this is still the ego speaking, just wearing sacred clothes. Jung warned that when the ego identifies with the self, the result is not enlightenment, but possession. The personality swells like a balloon filled with divine air, and inevitably, it bursts. True awareness humbles you. It doesn't elevate you above others. It brings you to your knees in reverence for the shared mystery that binds us all. The second trap is mystical isolation, believing that to stay pure, you must withdraw from the world. It's tempting to build walls around your peace, to meditate away the mess, to label discomfort as low vibration. But isolation starves the soul. Jung wrote that no one can individuate in a vacuum. We need the friction of life to polish the mirror of consciousness. The divine doesn't ask you to escape humanity. It asks you to embody it with awareness. The self wants to live through you, not apart from you. The third trap is the savior complex, the urge to heal others before healing yourself. You see the pain around you and rush to fix it, not realizing that what you're really trying to rescue is the part of you reflected in them. When compassion becomes control, love turns into martyrdom. The world doesn't need you to save it. It needs you to become whole. Because wholeness radiates healing naturally, it doesn't force, it invites. Every time you tend to your own wound, you offer the world permission to do the same. The fourth trap is regression to the past, clinging to the identity of the wounded self you've outgrown. Growth feels unfamiliar, so the psyche seeks comfort in old stories. I'm the one who was abandoned. I'm the one who struggles. But those are echoes of who you were, not prophecies of who you are. The ego confuses the pain of healing with a loss of identity, not realizing that freedom often feels like emptiness at first. The traveler mistakes the map for the destination, kneeling to study the paper while the landscape of truth unfolds all around him. Awakening is not an escape from the human. It's its redemption. The goal isn't to float above your emotions or detach from the world. It's to hold the entire paradox of being alive, to laugh and weep, to fall and rise, to see the sacred even in the ordinary. The awakened soul doesn't stand apart from life. It moves through it like light through stained glass, illuminating everything it touches, yet never claiming to be the source of the sun. The true awakening is humble. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to teach, prove, or preach. It lives quietly, creating ripples through presence, not performance. It remembers that every soul is walking its own spiral home, and that love, not superiority, is the final proof of consciousness. And when you cross these illusions, when the ego finally stops pretending to be the self, something extraordinary begins to emerge. A stillness that feels alive, a clarity that doesn't need words, a love that no longer seeks to possess, only to understand. Because awakening was never about becoming more. It was about becoming real. There comes a moment on the journey when all the noise you've been running from, the thoughts, the fears, the endless search for meaning, simply fades. It doesn't vanish in an instant. It dissolves like mist under the morning sun. For the first time, you stop striving to become, and something inside you whispers, "You already are." It's subtle, yet unmistakable. The mind pauses, the heart opens, and a quiet remembrance rises like light through water. That's when you realize the self you've been chasing was never far. It was the one watching patiently from within your every step. You begin to see the divine not as something distant or separate, but as the very essence that has lived through you all along. The search for God, for peace, for truth, it all folds back into the same discovery. You were never disconnected. The human and the divine meet in the mirror of consciousness. You look into your own eyes, and for a brief, infinite second, the gaze looking back feels both deeply personal and completely eternal. That's the moment the soul remembers itself, not through thought, but through recognition. It doesn't come as fireworks or revelation. It comes as warmth, as an exhale that feels like forgiveness, as the kind of stillness that makes time irrelevant. You stand there, perhaps in the middle of an ordinary day, and realize that every fragment you once judged, every part you try to fix, belonged to the same wholeness all along. You understand that the cracks weren't mistakes. They were the entry points of light. Jung called this inner return the archetype of the divine child. The child, he wrote in the Archetypes in the Collective Unconscious, section 165, represents the part of man that seeks totality. That child is not naive, it's timeless. It's the seed of renewal buried within despair, the spark of creation beneath destruction, the quiet voice that keeps whispering, "Begin again, no matter how many times you fall." It's the memory of wholeness wrapped in human form, the proof that even when you forget your divinity, it never forgets you. When the divine child awakens, you stop searching for the sacred in temples, books, or gurus, because you realize it's been breathing through your life from the beginning. Every sunrise was a sermon, every heartbreak, a purification, every silence, a classroom. The wisdom of the soul isn't intellectual, it's experiential. It reveals itself not in arguments, but in awe, not in definitions, but in direct knowing. You don't think your way into it. You feel your way home. You start living differently. You begin to listen, not just hear, to look, not just see. The self no longer feels like an abstract idea. It becomes a living presence that shapes your reality from the inside out. You move slower, speak gentler, love deeper. Not because you're trying to be spiritual, but because you remember that everything you touch is part of you. Even pain becomes sacred. You no longer ask, "Why did this happen to me?" but "What is this teaching me to remember?" You realize now that what your soul always sought was not knowledge, but reunion, not perfection, but presence. It didn't come to collect answers. It came to experience life in all its paradox. Joy and sorrow, chaos and order, shadow and light. The divine doesn't demand purity. It seeks participation. It wants to feel through you, laugh through you, weep and rise through you. Every experience, every emotion becomes part of the cosmic remembrance unfolding through your human form. This is the rebirth Jung spoke of, the reemergence of wholeness through awareness. You are no longer divided between spirit and flesh, between heaven and earth. You are both. The soul that once watched from above is now fully embodied, fully alive, fully awake. Life itself becomes prayer and existence, something to be worshipped rather than endured. And in that revelation, peace descends, not the fragile kind that avoids conflict, but the eternal kind that embraces everything. You finally understand nothing was wasted. Every detour, every wound, every silence was part of choreography. You weren't being punished. You were being prepared. The destination was never somewhere else. It was always you. So now, when you look into the mirror, you don't see the seeker anymore. You see the source. You see the spark that never went out, the flame that guided you through the darkest nights. You smile, not with pride, but with gratitude, because you remember. The soul doesn't learn, it remembers. Everything you've been looking for, you've always been. Comment below, I choose to remember my soul.